The official kit for Acheron just released, so let's get into her traces, her overall kit, some extra details about her personality, what she's like, and then see just how much more this is going to make us want to pull for her. Now, for the character preview, let's just read this very quickly. Acheron is a DPS character who accumulates charges by inflicting debuffs on enemies to unleash her ultimate, right? Just like the flowers we saw in the live stream. So she's not going to benefit from energy gain. With her ultimate, Acheron ignores enemy weakness types, drains all enemies' toughness, and reduces their all type res. So this part's honestly crazy. This makes it so for new players, Acheron might just be the best character you could possibly pull. Reason being is that in the same way that Mono Quantum is kind of like cherished in the sense that you can just put it on any team, and then depending or not depending on weakness types, right? You can just, beat the team consistently. She's also going to be a wonderful option as a DPS to then go against any side, regardless of whether they're lightning resistant or not, right? That's going to be just a crazy value indicator for how good she's going to be for new players or even just longtime players who also have already a bunch of DPSs and just want another crazy character like this. Now, as for the ult type res, that's going to be actually like a wonderful, wonderful way of increasing her damage because most characters just buff themselves, right? You've got Imbibitor, increases his damage, increases his crit damage. We got Jingliu, increases her attack, increases her crit rate, right? When it comes to enemies or characters rather, that increase their damage with these types of buffs or debuffs, in this sense, the ult type res, it's a wonderful buff. Reason being is that the more attack you get, the more crit damage you get, the more damage you get, the more diminishing returns you're going to get as a result. But there's a couple of debuffs or ways of increasing your damage that's going to benefit you the most, right? Notably, defense shred, because the more you get, the more valuable it is, right? Vulnerability, that's just going to be a flat increase to your damage depending on whatever the final value is, a crazy buff. Ult type res, although it doesn't have exponential increases similar to defense shred, it doesn't matter really because there's very little ways of increasing our res, right? Or increasing our res penetration and then decreasing their resistance, right? You pretty much only have Silver Wolf and then Ranmei. Other than that, there's not much. So the fact that there's not too many ways of us actually increasing that multiplier in the damage formula is going to make it so she's going to benefit so much more from attack buffs, damage buffs, and crit damage buffs, When it comes to Acheron's technique, she can also instantly eliminate some enemy targets during exploration. So that is just going to be a crazy quality of life bonus. So if you don't want to run around killing enemies and just wasting time there, you can just slash them and then be done with it. I do believe this also works in Simulated Universe. So if you want to save some time getting to 14,000 points, you can just use your skill points and then be done with it. Also in Simulated Universe, you're not going to be using your own skill points, so you're not going to have to overfarm too many of those trial snacks or energy stacks, technique snacks, whatever that bag of chips is that gives you technique points, Now, for her character preview, let's read this very quickly. A drifter claiming to be a galaxy ranger, her true name is unknown, and she walks through the cosmos alone, carrying with her a long sword. That's a very beautiful sword she's got there. Through aloof and tectone, her blade flicks out like a lashing lightning. Indeed, it does. Honestly, it is lightning. A crazy black, white, red lightning from some generation of, lightning gods that, gave her the power to do whatever the hell she does. And yet she always strikes with her scabbard, never drawing the sword free. So she's so strong she doesn't even need to use her blade. She just smacks him with her sword inside of her scabbard. Good enough for me. When it comes to personal matters, her self-habits. Let's talk about Acheron's habits. What are her habits, In the hazy memories of my distant hometown, there were often heavy thunderstorms. Fearing their makeup would be ruined by the rain, girls carried makeup with them wherever they went. I have no reason to do so anymore, but the habit still remains. Okay, so she carries makeup with her. I don't really care. So let's go to the next part. If one carries a blade, it's bound to be used to cut something down. My reason for drawing my sword, past, present, or future, remains singular. So her reason for carrying her sword? Well, is it unknown? I guess we actually don't necessarily know. We're going to have to get into the story of her a little bit more. Maybe it said it in the story, but honestly, I didn't pay attention too much in the 2.0 Penacony story, so can't really say for sure. When it comes to her hobbies, she likes peaches. Wow. They embody life's delights and pleasures, but her equally fragile and short-lived. Such regret is inevitable, so let it be. As a pear guy myself, I must say that pears are better than peaches, but in honor of her, I will be eating multiple peaches while pulling on her banner. Done. Never turn back. The path behind is gone. Always focus on the future, Even if you lose your 50-50, focus on the future, and then you get aventurine. That's pretty much what she's saying here. Okay, let's get into this part here. When battle starts, immediately gains a certain number of slashed dream and applies a certain number of crimson knot stacks to random enemies. When slashed dream reaches its upper limit, for every point of slashed dream that exceeds the limit, gain 1 stack of quadrivalent ascendance, up to a maximum number of quadrivalent ascendance stacks. So this slashed dream is going to be her flower thing. So she's going to start off the battle with a little bit of, energy, so to speak. And then the crimson knots is just going to be pretty much the multiplier increases on how much damage you can apply. Now, it might not actually be like multiplier, but it might just be like a damage bonus. We're not entirely sure yet, I guess. So that is that. When it comes to the other talent, when there are 1 or 2 Nihility characters other than Acheron in the team, the damage dealt by Acheron's basic attack, skill, and ultimate additionally increase by a certain amount. Now, this is probably going to be a multiplier increase, right, as opposed to a damage increase, which means that you are going to be losing on quite a bit of damage if you're not actually running her with 2 Nihility characters. But in honesty, why would you actually not use her with 2 Nihility characters unless she's E2 or something, right? Because if you have 2 Nihility characters, you're going to be applying so many more debuffs to the enemies, you're going to be gaining up the stacks for her ultimate and then just dealing crazy amounts of damage. That might actually be one of the reasons why you might want to run her similar to an Imbibitor, because the way slow Imbibitor works is that you build up all your skill points with your characters, possibly even skipping Acheron's or Imbibitor's turn, and then having all your debuffs for the massive Acheron turn or massive Imbibitor turn. So it might be similar to that, because since she's going to benefit from attack a lot, it might be very good to have her on attack boots, and having her on speed boots might be pretty considerable damage loss. So in that sense, it is going to be very good to have your Nihility characters be very, very fast and apply debuffs as fast as possible, because the faster they are, the more energy, so to speak, you can give to Acheron. Now, for the ultimate, when the Rain Blade from Acheron's ultimate hits enemy targets with Crimson Knot, her damage increases, stacking up to a number of times and lasting for a certain number of turns. When Stygian Resurge triggers, additionally deals damage for a certain number of times. Each time deals lightning damage equal and is viewed as part of the ultimate. Okay, so pretty much just the more Crimson Knot stacks you can apply to the enemies, the more damage you're going to just do overall. So we're going to get into the ultimate and the skill, I suppose, or the talent maybe, and then see how that, correlates exactly. Now, as for the level materials, you are going to be wanting to farm these battery things. These battery things are going to be very important. Might want to start now, honestly. Maybe even do your assignment thing and get a couple of those every single day before she drops. And for the Nihility traces, same as Black Swan. So with a double Calyx, should be farming that now if you are planning on getting Acheron, just so you can get as close to maxing her day 1 as possible. The new boss is going to be her material, so since we can only get a couple of those every week, 9 every week, do want to make sure that you're topped up on those so when she drops, you can max her. Now, idle animations. It is interesting that she has this offsetted long boot and short boot. I don't know if she had some dyslexia issues or she wore the wrong set, but it's actually quite interesting. That's the same costume that Alpha Crimson Weave has in Punishing Grey Raven, and I'm not complaining. It's a wonderful look. So let's get into the technique. Immediately attacks the enemies, gains quadrivalent ascendance at the start of each wave, deals lightning damage to all enemies, and reduces toughness of all enemies irrespective of their weakness type. So really quickly, that means that even though this isn't a dimension, she's going to attack multiple waves. So in MOC, when both waves come, you are going to deal damage at the beginning of both of them, and then reduce their ult type, or reduce their toughness, similar to a Silverwolf technique, right? Even better. Enemies with their weakness broken in this way will trigger the lightning weakness break effect. It's not too good. Shock isn't the best, but it's fine. Quadrivalent Ascendance. Acheron gains 1 point of slashed dream after she uses her ultimate, and applies 1 stack of Crimson Knot on a random enemy. Attacking normal enemies will instantly defeat them without the need to enter battle. Enemies who aren't hit won't consume skill points. So if you missed, you don't have to worry about that. Don't have to worry about getting more bags of chips or whatever. and that means that she's going to start at 1 as opposed to 0, so kind of in the same way that your character started 5 after you use your ultimate. This basic attack is honestly kind of crazy cool because the camera shifts at like this 40-degree angle, and it looks very, very good, although I don't know why you'd ever use your basic attack with Acheron. Talent. Atop rain leaf hangs oneness. Is that just 4 words that they put together randomly? That has no meaning. That actually has atop rain leaf hangs oneness. What? Okay. When Slashed Dream reaches its upper limit, so 9, the ultimate can be activated. During the ultimate, reduces enemies' toughness regardless of weakness types, and reduces all enemies' ult type res, lasting till the end of the ultimate. When any unit inflicts debuffs on an enemy target while using their ability, Acheron gains 1 point of Slashed Dream and inflicts 1 stack of Crimson Knot. So remember, Slashed Dream is her flowers. Crimson Knot is pretty much how much damage she's going to be dealing during her ult. If debuffs are inflicted on multiple targets, then the 1 stack of Crimson Knot will be inflicted on the enemy target with the most Crimson Knot stacks. So pretty much, if you'll be applying debuffs on the single target enemy, which is what you're going to be wanting to do, then her single target damage will be considerably higher than if you were just to have like a spread AoE attack similar to your edition. Now, when it comes to this effect can only be triggered once per every ability usage, I'm assuming that's also going to be once per character's turn, right? So if you use your ult and then, let's say you skill with Pela and then ult at the same time, you might only be getting 1 stack. So you may be wanting to wait until an enemy's turn to then use your debuff and then get multiple stacks and possibly get a 1 or maybe even 2 turn ult, right? When Acheron is on the battlefield, when an enemy target leaves or any unit is defeated, their Crimson Knot stacks will be transferred to the enemy target with the most Crimson Knots left on the battlefield. So very, very good. Once you defeat the enemies, you're just going to be transferring all your Crimson Knots to the main target, given there's going to be a cap on it, but regardless, you do want to have the maximum amount of damage being applied single target as possible. Now, for the skill. Gains 1 point of Slashed Dream, inflicts 1 stack of Crimson Knot on a single target enemy, and deals lightning damage to them, as well as a certain amount of lightning damage to adjacent targets. So this is pretty much how, if you have her Light Cone as well, you're going to be getting 2 stacks every single time you attack with her skill. So that's going to be pretty good. It's going to be a similar, I'm assuming, like an AoE blast, or not an AoE, a blast, right? So the majority of damage to a single target, and then a little bit of adjacent damage, similar to Kafka, right? Or any destruction character. Octobolt Flash. Now that makes a little bit more sense. Slashed Dream Cries in Red. And that's a crazy cool name. That's a crazy cool. Oh my god, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Oh wow. Okay, that's awesome. Delivers 3 Rain Blades and 1 Stygian Resurge in succession. Enemies cannot be inflicted with Crimson's Knot while the ultimate is active. So that part of her talent where if you defeat an enemy, then their stacks get transferred is not going to count during her ultimate. So pretty much you're going to be wanting to get rid of the adjacent enemies before you do the ult. So I don't know how well you're actually going to be able to do that, because if you have 2 debuffers on the team, unless your Silver Wolf does a ton of damage or your Pela does a ton of damage, you might just be relying on Acheron's skill to then get rid of the small enemies and then just deal maximum damage to the big enemy. Now for the Rain Blade, which we're going to be triggering 3 times, deals lightning damage to a single target enemy and removes up to 3 stacks of Crimson Knot from the target. When Crimson Knot is removed, it deals lightning damage to all enemies, with the additional damage multiplier for this increased for every stack of Crimson Knot removed. The damage multiplier has a maximum limit, so just based off this, that means the Crimson Knot stack is going to be 9, I'm assuming, the max number, because you're going to want to take it down from 9 to 6 to 3 to 0. So I'm just assuming that's how that would work, right? Stygian Resurge deals lightning damage to all enemies and removes all Crimson Knots. So pretty much that would be 1, that'd be 2, that'd be 3, and then 4 is Stygian Resurge. That is sick. Genuinely, that is crazy. So, I guess that's the end of the ultimate, and that's the end of this. So, when it comes to her teammates, let's just touch on that very, very quickly. Obviously, characters like Pela are going to be very, very good. Might be better than Silverwolf in some cases, right? Just because she's going to be very, very skill point positive. Not skill point, not too much actually. She might just be skill point neutral, but she's going to be applying a 2-turn ult, which is going to be very good on the uptime. And that might be one way to just increase her ult, the frequency of her ult even faster. Now, as for other characters, Silverwolf is obviously going to be very good. When it comes to other nihilities, Gwynethyn is going to be a great option. Black Swan is going to be a great option, considering that you're going to probably already have defense shred from a Pale or a Silverwolf. So the more defense shred you get, the better. If you do have Tutorial Light Cone, it might be very good to have Tutorial Light Cone on her because she will also be able to apply the vulnerability debuff during an enemy's turn. So if you're able to interrupt their turn and then use your ult, then you might actually be able to take advantage of multiple parts of Black Swan's kit, which is going to be pretty damn good. Kafka might also be good. She's not going to buff her in any way, but since you're going to be using debuffers on the team, that means that any DPS you have on the team alongside her will also be doing pretty sizable amount of damage. So if you guys don't have too many other debuffers, and if you do have Kafka, that might be a good partner. Welt is going to be great. Honestly, Welt, if you use him as a sustain, might even allow you to put another Harmony character in and then buff her even further. Now, you wouldn't want to use Tingyun because of the energy, but like a Sparkle or a Bronya is going to be pushing up Acheron multiple times, and then that's going to allow you to just get multiple stacks, especially if you have her Light Cone, because every time she gets a turn, that's 2 stacks, which means that possibly it's only going to take her 2 turns, and then all your characters 1 turn, and then that's your ult every single time. So you might be looking at 2 to maybe even 3 ults per wave, depending on the speeds of your characters. So that's going to be pretty crazy. Now, as for sustains, obviously, you're not going to be wanting to use Huohuo too much because energy isn't as valuable, although you can still give energy to your support characters, and that might increase their ult uptime, which will then increase her uptime. So honestly, Huohuo might actually not be a bad option whatsoever, considering the attack buff is also going to be very valuable on Acheron. Other synergies, might be Fu Xuan for the crit rate is nice. If you do run a preservation unit, you do want to always run them on trend, because if your preservation unit gets hit, because they do have a higher taunt value, so they will get hit more often, then you're going to be applying dot debuffs to the enemies, which is going to be another way of increasing her ult time even further. So if you guys do have trend, try to level that up before Acheron comes out, and then pop that on any of your preservation characters. Now, Aventurine, he's going to come out later, but Aventurine will also be able to apply debuffs in that sense, and Trend is just going to be good on every single preservation unit. So, that is going to be the end of the video. If you guys have any ideas, let's have a discussion about Acheron in the comments. I do respond to pretty much every single comment, and like the video, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Adios.